Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. What happens if we are not having any faith, not having any prejudice? To an extent, some occasion to study the Upanishad in their original, if any master had the chance, or anyone, suppose I had the chance. So I must admit that I did not bring into my studies even a trace of faith in their sacredness or any prejudice against them. So, with an open mind, I reached their portals expecting nothing, hoping nothing. So, if I or anyone studied and lived their truth more as a seeker than as a believer, then with the confidence it can be told that they will realize that they have discovered some aspects of the great rishis, their ways of thinking, their mental attitude, and their methods of approach to the problem of life. No greater scientists have ever come to work in the world of science, so sincere and faithful to facts and logic as these great scientists who dealt with life as much and estimated their observations in their truth declarations. Just as to the scientists, the world of objects provided the field of inquiry, so also to the sages or rishis, life as such presented itself as their theme for investigation and study. Some practical example. Supposing a scientist feels a sentimental attachment to the sample of common salt in his test tube, surely he cannot thereafter do much of an investigation and discover the composition of sodium chloride. He would neither burn it nor dissolve it. Like in my childhood, when I got my first big present, suppose a bicycle. So, there is a system that after riding a few days of a new bicycle, we have to give it to the repairer because some screws, some nuts, some bolts, they gets loosened. So when I gave it to the repairer, he started doing it and started hammering it. And on that time, my bicycle was my life. And when I saw it, that, you know, that someone is hammering it on like that, I started telling, Are, uncle, please slowly. He was my father's age. He told, My dear son, you go somewhere else and come after half an hour. It's my job. Let me do. See, I was so attached to the bicycle, so as if it was hammering me. But the repairer, it was his bread and butter, it was his blood. He was a good repairer, good mechanic. But he had no attachment with these particular things, unnecessary attachment. But he had enormous love for the instrument and everything else. So he knows what is justified to do on that time. Similarly, if we are to maintain a sentimental attachment to life as such, it would generate a host of false values in us. It would distort and dim our vision of the whole. Therefore, the great rishis of old, as true investigators of life as such, developed in themselves almost a superhuman detachment from life and remaining, as it were, far from the maddening crowd of ignoble strife, observed the entire life as a theme for their intense and thorough research and study. As a result of their observations, they came to certain fundamental conclusions which we must try to understand. We must try to understand. Their first attempt was to find out the nature and functions of life as available at various levels of existence and to come to a common definitions of life. After very careful observations, they came to declare that life is a series of continuous and unbroken experiences. Thus, the life of an animal is a sum total of its feelings, just as the life of any man is determined by the sum total of his experiences. If thus the unit of life be the individual experience, and the total life be the sum total of all experiences, then a successful life is that in which the individual can have a larger number of successful and happy experiences. A life of failure is, therefore, that in which the majority of experiences are of failures. Now you can ask me, what is the unit of life? Naturally, the great scientists of life, goaded and encouraged by their observations, ventured forth with more and more daring to dissect and discover the constituents of even the unit of life called experience. Just as in recent times, the unit of substance, the atom, has been tickled to smile and expose its contents. So too, these great doctors of subjective investigations brought their single-pointed intellect to observe the contents of the unitary experience. So, those close observations disclosed that no experience in life is possible without its fundamental triple factors, trio it called trai. What are they? The experiencer, the experienced, and a set relationship that is to be maintained between the experiencer and the experienced, called experiencing. Clear now? Experiencer, object of experience, and the relationship between two, which is called experiencing. Bhokta, bhogya, and bhoga. Clear? Unless these factors function in the same given field of time and space, no experience can come to pass. The scientists of the modern day are also certainly, in their own way, great investigators of the ultimate truth. But their field of inquiry is constituted of the world of objects or the world of experienced. So on the other hand, the great rishis of old, the scientists of the inner world, sought the ultimate truth in an analysis of the experiencer, of the world of the subject. Thus, both being scientists, the only distinction between them is in their fields of inquiry and in the methods of their respective sciences. And you will find that the ancient methods of the rishis were certainly much more perfect than the modern methods of the scientists of our own times. In fact, in the 18th century, we could not have made such a strong statement. But today we can make it because with the breakup of the atom and the consequent discovery of its contents to be nothing but electric charges in motion, even the great scientists of the of this age, I can tell you the name also, Arthur Stanley Eddington, have started declaring that physics can hereafter develop only by a thorough investigation into the structure, nature, and behavior of the mind. The masters of Upanishads, however, adopted a totally different approach to the entire problem. The world of objects can be brought under 5 main headings: Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Sound, touch, forms, tastes, and smells. Besides these, we know nothing of the world outside. And all the sciences deal with only these. As it were, the observer in us looks onto a world of variegated names and forms through 5 miniature peep windows, each limited in scope and giving us only a partial viewpoint of the world. The reports thus gained by the mind from its 5 observation posts are together assimilated to form a full report of the so-called world outside. So if we discuss about our tireless thinkers, we can say that unless there be within us an intelligent, conscious principle that can carefully cognize this, the world outside has in itself no meaning or purpose. The tireless thinkers of the Vedic period, in their superhuman daring, flew yet higher to conclude through convincing logical arguments that the world outside is but a projection of the active mind. Thus, with exquisite intelligence and unerring consistency of thinking, in their superhuman logic, the great rishis came to recognize the sovereignty of the experiencer, of the experienced, and the experiencing. The object and the subject-object relationship can both have an existence and function only when they are presided over by the conscious principle and subject. Therefore, they started an investigation into the nature, into the constitution, and into the function of the subject and its world. Not only the European readers of Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism, but even the haphazard so-called Panditas, scholars of India, do criticize now and then the introvert nature of this Vedic philosophy. Both the gods and the priests live in the East, looking into themselves, neglectful of the external world of happenings. Little do they know that they are criticizing not Vedanta as preached in the original texts of the scripture, but as it is now available in these days of utter Hindu decadence. Today, the same vital principles have become a glorious excuse for an incompetent and sluggard generation to rot in itself into a filthy mine of impotence and idleness. Never did Vedanta preach such a life of inactivity, either tacitly or explicitly. Not even the author of the Arabian Nights, Sahasrara Rajani, would have discovered such a meaning in the Hindu Upanishads. This is only an instance of Satan reading the Bible. Day before yesterday, I think, in America, something had happened. A lot of people died out of heart attack because there was a concert and the musicians used some satanic apparatus or something like that. It's like that. So this is only an instance of like Satan reading the Bible for his own convenience, and an ineffectual generation of dull lotus eaters have found it convenient to tar the face of brilliant Vedanta by their deliberate misinterpretation of the, you know, wondrous life of perfect activity declared and advocated by the Vaidika philosophy. Clear? Thank you. Up to that.